I was hearing the same justifications, the same fear mongering. So right away, it's an appeal to security or an appeal to your safety. Like, oh, it's dangerous. They're developing nuclear weapons. Like, do you want Iran to have a nuke? And then it's the dehumanizing rhetoric. Well, it's radical Islam. They're fundamentalists. These mullahs are very extreme. And it's like, look, it's just seemed to me like the same vacuous arguments for murdering and destruction. And like, I mean, I'm no pacifist, man, but I'm certainly anti-war. And I think it should be a last option, like the very last option always. And like, we just get manipulated into these things. And I'm hearing the same rhetoric, man. And it's kind of demoralizing. We've come full circle. Here we are.
John Paul Berg, we are back, my brother. It is good to see you. Professional setting, professional camera. You got your Shure microphone. I love it, dude. You really went all in, man.
Yeah, brother. I figured if I was going to do it, I might as well try to do it good, right? So this is about the best I could do with my budget. So here we go.
Dude, you're doing better than me, man. I'm still working on this $30 or $100 mic that I bought on Amazon. So let's talk. Let's tell everybody like why you've invested. What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm launching a podcast. After the last 2 years growing my audience on X, I figure it's going to be good to branch out a little bit. I'm exclusively on X, so I figure the best way to do it, considering a lot of the people I've been able to make inroads with and meet, would be to just do an interview type conversation show focused on cultural issues, politics, Canadian and American, but geopolitically too. Like, I don't like to put barriers on anything, just kind of riffing with relevant alternative media figures is my whole thing.
That's the best way to go about it, man. I mean, that's kind of what I did was when I started. The whole reason I started Brave New Normal was just because I was confused about what was happening in the world, and I wanted to talk to people who seemed to have an idea as to what the fuck was going on. And it just kind of went from there. And now, like, where Brave New Normal is, like, I still don't know what the fuck is happening in the world. But
it just continuously gets more convoluted. And once you think you're on steady ground with a certain way you're thinking of things, the dynamic shifts. It's never been like this. Information dissemination in general, it's never been more convoluted. There's never been more varying interests that are trying to influence the spaces. Domestically, internationally, it's just these narrative hawks, man. There's just people, not just shilling for narratives, like actually kind of proactively attacking any deviation from a narrative or worldview. And it's just phenomenal because a lot of the people I'm seeing doing it, without going into names, are people that I've always respected. And I learned a lot from a lot of people. And then to see them totally being hypocritical in regards to their free speech views. Like once it has to do with Israel, it's like, oh, you gotta push this narrative, right? And then the same appeals to authority and credentialism that we've seen with the woke response. Now they're doing it, and then they kind of levy any deviation. It's called you're woke right. If you don't agree with this, and like, look, man, when the woke right term first came up, I kind of mentioned it because there is more of a reflexive response to kind of the woke left, essentially, and there is an extreme conservative. I never liked the woke right term in and of itself, and some of the explanations for it. But like, if you're going to acknowledge some of the more extreme elements of conservatism, you have to call these guys the joke right, because these neoconservative pro-Israel guys are just, and I know it's a nuanced topic, and I'm not weighing in on one side or the other, but it's just abundantly clear who's shilling for narratives right now, and it's kind of shocking.
It's a cult. That's what it is.
Oh, they're all working or something, right? Like,
no, it's a religion. It's a fucking cult. So, and by the way, for my listeners, I apologize to everybody. The window is open in here because it is hot as shit in Alberta again today. So I apologize if you guys hear cars in the background. I tried to, before we started recording, I was like, okay, let's close the window. And then I was sitting here for like 5 minutes and I was just sweating like crazy. Oh, yeah. So I was like, open window is better than pit stains. Anyways, tracking back the origination of the woke right term. Now, I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure I'm the person who created it. And I know that because I had never seen that term used before, and I wrote an essay, I want to say about a year ago, maybe six months to a year ago. And at the end, I used the term woke right to refer to what the right wing was developing into, which is a mirror image of the radical left. And I know that there were certain people who are very influential in the political space who saw it because they messaged me and said, hey, you know, I read your piece. I fucking love it. It's excellent, blah, 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 blah. But I didn't mean it in terms of people who step out of line with whatever the right wing extremist dogma is. I meant it in terms of, in reference to the right wing extremists, the people who are becoming more extreme on the right, people like Laura Loomer, who like were basically headhunting anyone who stepped out of line with Trump when he decided to bomb Iran.
Yeah, it was wild
as if
to watch that, man.
It's a fucking cult.
Yeah.
It's a cult.
Well, dude,
that's what it is.
We're roughly the same age. It's just like I seen some of those memes where it was like Back to the Future, and it's like, hey, I think I seen this episode before, and all of the memes is Trump, is Bush, and stuff. Like I was hearing the same justifications, the same fear mongering. So right away, it's an appeal to security or an appeal to your safety. Like, oh, it's dangerous. They're developing nuclear weapons. Like, do you want Iran to have a nuke? And then it's the dehumanizing rhetoric. Well, it's radical Islam. They're fundamentalists. These mullahs are very extreme. And it's like, look, it's just seemed to me like the same vacuous arguments for murdering and destruction. And like, I mean, I'm no pacifist, man, but I'm certainly anti-war. And I think it should be a last option, like the very last option always. And like, we just get manipulated into these things. And I'm hearing the same rhetoric, man. And it's kind of demoralizing. We've come full circle. Here we are.
Yeah, we're back at the neoconservative right.
Wild.
And that's the part that really like breaks my brain, right? Is that like, I come from the left. That's where I started, and I think most 20-year-olds start on the left because we don't understand the way the world works.
Pseudo-moralism too, right? You
right.
want something to stand for, and especially in our era where there wasn't a lot of valid causes, right? Like it was just rebel against the machine, rebel against the system, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, like I still have a deep hatred for Bush and Cheney and all of the neoconservatives that lit the entire fucking Middle East on fire, for that 20-year period, right? Yeah. But what's interesting to me is watching all these people, some of whom like I read or I knew personally during that time, circle back and now like repeating neoconservative propaganda. It's like, honestly, it's befuddling to me. And, I was thinking about this the other day, like if it's just human nature for us, like obviously tribalism is a part of our nature, but what's happened is that political ideologies have developed into religions. And, in the essay that I recently wrote, I cap it off by at the end saying we need God. And what I mean by that is like, what we're missing is that common ground,
a central unifying ethic. Essential, right? So you can, have your society around it. When I was on with Payman yesterday, I mentioned Will Hepburn, the American philosopher's analogy of cut flower theory. Like Western culture was very much sustained by Christianity, and it's the underpinning of all of our laws. So even if you're a secular atheist, you have to understand the profundity of Christianity in the development of our nations and our normals, like our societal norms. When you get into the ontological realities of it, like it's the logos, right? Like you need an extrapolated ethic from a biblical narrative in order to kind of frame what morals are, or you're in postmodernism. Like it's the only answer. It's the only alternative to it, right? And that's everyone has their own individual interpretation and therefore their own truth. So you just get into really fucking weird philosophical territory with that. And we're seeing ramifications of that societally. One of the biggest ones is, like you say, we're putting in the place where God should be, we're putting government there. Like even just as an orienting central thought, right? Like I'm not saying you have to be like some like vehement Christian or like, you know what I mean? You're like a Christian nationalist or anything, but just having it as a principle, right? Like as an explanation, it kind of, it's the way you get a logos and kind of gauge morality from.
And you know where we're making our huge mistake, obviously, is in replacing God with anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I'm watching. It's weird. It's like watching people grasp at straws, and they're like right now they're all clutching onto their tribe. You know, like they've all locked arms and they're holding on for dear life. And any argument or anything that, you know, disproves any of the silly shit that they believe, it's like they're just like it's like they're playing Red Rover or something.
Yeah, any deviation from their orthodoxy, right? And look, man, like the left is very fixated on like sexual identity or their self-interpreted identity, but the right are very fixated on political tribe identity. And I mean, it's never been so dynamic. I don't want to try to identify myself anywhere. And I mean, as for the uniparties that have existed, they've been around since the 60s, man, all through Western Europe, all through like, I truly believe Reagan was the last one that even pushed back a little bit against them. And I think Reagan was heavily influenced by the deep state. But then I think after Reagan, I think every subsequent administration, until at least Trump, and then maybe even including Trump, was in on it. It's that controlled opposition, Leninist controlled opposition dialectic. And it's just one herd dog scares us to the right and the other back to the left. Despite the back and forth where the trajectory never changes, it's towards centralized control. And that's what we're seeing all across Western Europe now. With the election of Trump in 2016 and then again in 2024, it was like very much seemingly like he was against this established order. And I think a lot of us had faith that he was, and some of the trials he went through and the assassination attempts led credence to that theory for a lot of us. And then like supporting him as much and to just see him turn around on a dime and support this, it's just kind of wild to see, man. And he backpedaled a bit. Obviously, it could have went a lot worse, and thus far, tragedy has been averted. But it was still very alarming to see that.
So, what do you think happened? What caused his turn?
Well,
do you?
I mean, it's obviously qualified as conjecture. It's pure speculation. But there's two groups that are very much influencing this administration, and one of them is like the pro-Israel lobby and Israel interests, and the other is more of a traditional populist-based MAGA movement. And I'm not coming in on either side of that because I don't align with either side of that entirely. There's a lot of like ethno-nationalism and religious nationalism on some of the populist side. Like it's immensely complex, but there's very seemingly two dominant influences that are trying to sway this administration. And it seems like, I don't know, man. I'd like to give Trump the benefit of the doubt a little bit because he's got to be in the toughest situation anyone has ever been in if he's trying to juggle these two interests and like avert, you know, kind of pushing the war or pushing the violence farther. Because like we're at war. We're at world war in some very real sense. And then there's this trade wars that are going on. It's like the post-World War II liberal-based order is just, it's changing. Think of it as complex system theories. Like we're in a phase transition. Whatever everything is, the economy, the political systems, is in some kind of major phase transition. And it seems like the usual suspects, lots of banking interests are pushing us into another war. It's phenomenal to behold.
It really is. And, you know, see, here's what I think. And I have no proof. Again, this is pure speculation. But I've paid close attention to how this thing with Iran kind of developed and then was executed. And it appears to me that Israel, their preemptive strike, or more accurately, attack on Iran, it seems to me like it was more or less them acting on their own. Now, from a military standpoint, obviously they need American operators to help them guide the systems that they use. But I think, because you see, the thing is with Trump, there's not a lot of smoke and mirrors. He kind of is what he is. And there isn't a lot of like cloak and dagger stuff going on with him, as we've seen. Like generally he's pretty honest with what he tells people. If he can't share the information, he says, I can't tell you that. And it's, so he was in negotiations with Iran, and I've heard people, posit the theory that the negotiations were, just a way to kind of temporarily disarm Iran in order for Israel to attack. But I don't think that was the case. I think he was in negotiations. He was taking them seriously. And then Israel launched their attack.
That's too.
And he had to, the B-2 bombers that targeted the nuclear facilities in Iran, that wasn't something I don't think he necessarily wanted to do. I think at that point it was we have to do, because we don't know what Iran has and what they don't have. So we have to go in now and do an actual preemptive strike in the event that they actually do have nuclear capable weapons. And I think that's what that was about. I think he sent in those bombers to bomb those nuclear facilities just in case Iran had something that they were going to load and use against Israel. And so that clip, for people who haven't seen it, you can just Google it, of him walking across the White House lawn when he says neither one of them know what the fuck they're doing. Yeah. There's visible anger and frustration in his voice, and I think that's real.
Yeah,
I think what happened was he was completely caught off guard in the middle of negotiations. Israel launched their attack on Iran, and he was visibly fucking angry that he had to follow up with bombing Iran, and now has opened a can of worms.
100%, because he has to save face for himself and his leadership as well throughout the kind of melee after this occurred. And you could see that was a genuine sentiment, because I mean, he's never dropped the F-bomb in any other context that I'm aware of so blatantly. You could tell it was out of frustration. But it's just so hard to see, right? Like geopolitical 5D chess is going on, man. And it's at the same time, like I referenced earlier, like it's never been more convoluted. There's never been more disingenuous players trying to protect and push narratives, right? To get stable ground to stand on where you feel like, you have a modicum of certitude to say like, hey, this is the way something is. It's not there as it was in the past, or it is with other issues, right? It's wild, man. It's like I say, it makes me think that we are in World War III right now, and it's how far does it go from here, right?
Well, I think we have been for a while. I think all of these smaller wars have just been, even if you look at the lead up to World War II, right? There were smaller exchanges and conflicts that led to the bigger one. And I think for us, like our sense of time is distorted by the internet because everything moves so fast. So when you think about like Afghanistan, like the war in Afghanistan, that feels like a million years ago. But that war, that pullout, the United States pulled out of Afghanistan under Biden, I think in his first year, right? So that would have been 2016, right? Mm-hmm. So, like we're talking about a very short timeline. And if you look at, any other major war, I mean, the First and Second World Wars, obviously, there's a lot that goes into the lead up, not to mention the fact that the United States has been engaged in hybrid war with China for at least 20 years.
Yeah, that's the way China, it's more subverting, taking advantage of markets, like without firing a shot, just taking over the economic aspect of it. And there's a term for it that I can't conjure up presently, but I know exactly what you mean.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, the thing about China is that they've never been a country that really engages in kinetic war. They did during the Korean War because Mao had millions of, malnourished Chinese bodies to throw at the American machine. But they've never been a kinetic war country. They've been invaded multiple and conquered multiple times. I mean, Japan has invaded China I don't know how many fucking times over thousands of years. The point is that China is not a country it's not Russia. It's not going to engage you in a bullet for bullet war. What they're going to do is they're going to hack into your power grids and shut you down. They're going to create TikTok to brainwash your youth. Mm-hmm. They're going to inject Maoist philosophy into your education systems as they did. Look, the woke cultural revolution was completely I wouldn't say completely, but was propagated by Chinese intelligence agencies that infiltrated our university systems, and then it trickled down and kind of spawned out from there.
100%.
And so
that's like Yuri Bezmenov laid out. I'm sure you're aware of him and the term ideological subversion. Like, this gentleman sat down, and I think it was like 84. Ironically, it was 1984. I think he did the interview with Griffin, and he sat down, and it was 3 hours. It was thorough. He broke a chalkboard out and just explained like what was happening in the West. And when you look at it now, it's just shocking how spot on he was. You could see it. It's called the Long March Through the Institutions occurred. The Frankfurt School of Thought infiltrated academia. And then more broadly, it leaked out of the humanity departments. And then we're just literally, we're graduating like radical Marxists. Like, they've been, the conceptual framings that they've been inundated with have shifted their perspective. And it's nothing short of ideological subversion. It's and we see it more broadly in society too. It's not just like in conjunction with that. Hollywood has been subverting people, and even like attacking the family. Payman and I started to get onto this a little bit, and then I thought of this other aspect of it. You look at the situational comedy, and you look at like everyone after like the Leave It to Beaver years. So when you look into like the 70s sitcoms and on, the male was generally this kind of dumb working class dude. And then like the woman was kind of more the boss, and it was like starting to inundate the culture with these kind of framing shifts is what I'll say. Right. And I recently listened to lots of Nixon's administration was recorded. I don't know if the story on it exactly, if he was doing it or someone else was, but
he was doing it.
Yeah. And there's a conversation that was picked up and it kind of made its rounds on X there a few months ago. And it's him talking to one of his aides. And he's like, I watched this movie last night. And it had this hard head he was referring to, this working class guy. And he was saying his hippie son-in-law was like making him look dumb. And there was homosexuals in the show. Like, we can't have this. And the White House aide was familiar. He's like, that's Archie Bunker, sir. You know what I mean? It's not a movie. It's a weekly show. And he's like, well, we can't have that homosexuality on screen. That's what happened to the Greeks. And it was just such a random thing, but like the profundity of the influence of this. So when we moved away in the 60s from a lot of like, just, you could even say, forget about the conspiracies around it, just the natural progression that happened when we started to decouple the state from the church or from Christianity in any regard, we started to drift into these, I would say a susceptible phase. And then we're more susceptible to adhering to this ideological subversion. And it's coming, man, from every angle. It's like you feel like once you can see it, you kind of can't unsee it. And if you didn't sincerely question your own sanity, then you're probably not seeing the profundity of what I'm seeing. You know what I mean? Because it's like, at some point, it's a sophisticated system that we're not aware of. We're all just these individual nodes. And if we're not receptive to the stimuli that's coming from the media, then we have to be receptive to the people that are receptive to it. I know that sounded a little convoluted, but like, and that's
it makes
the
perfect
dynamics
sense
of a mass formation, right? Even the ones that aren't affected by it, they have to pick now. They're influenced by it. And it's just, it's hard not to look at it and think that there's something broader happening. Like I say, some kind of major phase transition where the economy is going to be transitioned in some regard, most likely central bank digital currencies. And I mean, Nova Scotia, I don't know if other provinces are doing this, but I just got an announcement that we're going to have health cards that are going to be totally digital. So it'll be a digital ID because a health card is used as a government ID. So, I mean, we're here already, man. Everything the conspiracy theorists said is like spot on. And what scares me a little bit, man, it's kind of a dark thought, but it's like they're letting us kind of talk about it all. Like there's lots of us that can see it and we're trying to get a sense of it. Obviously, it's speculative in a lot of aspects, but do they just not care anymore that we can see it? Are they that far along with the implementation of this that there's no stopping it in their minds? So they're just like, yeah, let the peasants see it at this point. I mean, they can't stop what's coming.
I think I've been thinking about this a lot lately, actually, because, I've had to, as the right wing has turned, as the MAGA right has fractured and portions of it have developed into religious cults. I had to like really look at myself and think about, one, what am I contributing to with my own commentary? What am I doing? Because X is very much designed to invoke and trigger emotions. And a lot of what I write on X has been reactive.
Yeah, me too.
And, you know, and so I had to stop and think like, okay, first of all, what am I contributing to? Because I'm writing stuff in the moment that is getting a lot of reach and finding a lot of people. And it's not to say that I'm misrepresenting myself or my ideas in any way, because I'm not. But there's a difference between writing when you're clear-headed versus writing when you've been triggered or
Sure.
you know, into writing something, right? So I had to think about that. And I was thinking about, like, what are we doing? Where is this going? And what and why are we at this point where they can just do everything out in the open? And number one, it seems like people are placated enough for them to get away with it, right? Because here, you and I are talking about it, and you know, when you're on X, it seems like there's millions of people who are all aware of what's happening, but we have to remember we don't live on a planet of millions.
100%.
We live on a planet of billions, right? And it seems like the majority of the public, even if they're peripherally aware of what's happening, they're either distracted or apathetic to it.
100%. Look, man,
And
I think, just to interject, sorry, we got a bit of latency. Yeah. I view X as a sophisticated, self-perpetuating propaganda tool, where the user himself inadvertently, not like unbeknownst to him, becomes the propaganda that's utilized to trigger the other side of a lot of these controlled opposition scenarios, man. Like, it's this, we're just fueling these dialectics and we're being used to it. And it's like, you could write something in good faith, as clear-headed as you could want to be, but then it's going to be shown to people that might have an antithetical view. And that's going to create conflict. So they can de-emphasize narratives with it. They could put emphasis on any narrative. They can cause any type of a conflict, because all they would have to do is show, like, say I'm on there commenting and I'm scrolling down my feed and it's showing me a bunch of like radical leftists. I'm going to bite. I can't help myself sometimes, right? That's what happens. Like you say, it kind of, it's a reactive response. And then that's kind of, if you're a good writer and you can articulate yourself, that's resonating with other people. And they're like, yeah. So, I mean, what are we doing? We're just fueling these rage cycles for the establishment, and it's distractionary. Like, again, I always use the bread and circuses analogy from Rome. Like, you know, distract the peasantry with the bread and circuses, you know, as long as you keep that going. But now it's so sophisticated. The ruling class has so many implements at their disposal to distract us, keep us divided, and keep us fighting with one another. And I think the reason we can't get out of it is because we don't have a real forum. If we had a popular forum, if Elon bought X and he really made it wide open, where it was just like the algorithm was fundamentally different and like people could see things they want to, we could find some kind of unity. I truly believe that too. And that's certainly what they don't want, right? The whole progressive versus conservative dichotomy is what's used to control us. It's so divisive. And at the end of the day, man, like, there's some serious issues that will probably never be reconciled between that. But we can have some unity in the sense of our government without ideological uniformity. I don't like, and I'm a Catholic, I don't feel any obligation to impose that belief structure on you. And I'm not some kind of Catholic light neither. Like, I try to take it seriously and I look into the more tradition of it. But for me, it's my own choice. Like, I wouldn't want to see a state, like, I don't want to live in a theocracy. And a lot of the people on the farther right, they do, and they don't. And for me, that's antithetical to what I get from the narrative of Christianity, right? Like, anything that is done, you're compelled to, or it's done by the threat of violence, is done for the tyranny of man, not for the glory of God. I mean, that has to be something in Christianity that I choose. And if I don't choose it and it's imposed on me, it's not real anyway. And it's like, it's hard to imagine. It's like, why are there snakes in the Garden of Eden? And it's because if we had a society that was so structured and repressive to ensure there were no snakes there, it would become the hell instead of the paradise. Like, you know what I mean? In some true narrative sense, like, I don't know. I went off in the weeds there a little bit, but
No, dude, I'm loving it. I'm listening to what you're saying, and I completely agree. Like, you know, going back to what I originally was talking about, I think we need to return to just those basic core Christian tenets. That doesn't mean that everybody has to be a Christian, right? You're free to worship and practice whatever religion you choose. But in terms of the central axiom that we all follow, I think that's where we have to return to that, or else we're just going to keep seeing progressivism devolve into chaos and conservatism evolve into cult behavior.
yeah,
And that's really what it is like, you know, conservatives are getting so organized that they're developing into a religion, whereas the left is becoming so extreme and radicalized that they are completely unwinding and you know, it's just developing into total complete chaos. And that's where we are. And now you have and not now, but I mean, for the last 10 years, if not 15, it's like we're right on the precipice of a civil war. We're just waiting for one side to fire the shot. And, you know, like for myself, I find myself right in the middle. I'm a Christian. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, but I'm not like out here, not first of all, professing to be perfect, because I don't think there is a perfect Christian, and those who claim or at least present themselves as such tend to be the fucking worst people.
yeah. There was one perfect Christian.
Right, exactly, right? Christ himself.
That's right.
But, you know, like I just think that we need to have some sort of central agreement, something that like you said, the unifying force, and that's what we're missing. And I don't know, like, where I'm stuck on this is how to fix it, because our tolerance and compassion, you know, like going back to your example of like 1960s and 70s television. Well, as progressivism naturally progresses, it leads to a point of chaos because, right, we keep progressing toward whatever end goal, right? And you see it. You see the family fall apart. You see, I mean, the family structure is the biggest one. You see government replace God, because we naturally need some sort of higher authority that we all adhere to. But the problem is when you replace God with government, not everybody's going to agree on that authority figure.
Yeah, it's 100%, man. It's you said it earlier when you said postmodernism. One of the central axioms of postmodernism would be this moral relativism. So what's right or moral in my regard is it's up to the individual, right? And there is no overarching meta narrative to explain everything. That's the major precept of it.
Before you continue, do you want me to tell you where that idea, one of the earliest writings of that idea, where it can be found?
Sure.
Mao Zedong's diaries from when he was 20 years old and getting involved in the Communist Party.
Yeah, it goes back to a lot of postmodernist philosophers too, right? Like when you get into Nietzsche and Dostoevsky and what they were really trying to say, it was like a lot of it was to that, like Nietzsche specifically, where it's like God is dead. That's what that means, and we'll never be able to wipe the blood off our hands, I believe was the next line. Mm-hmm. It wasn't this declarative thing, but then Nietzsche he was right on his diagnosis. His prognosis was wrong in my estimation, but who am I to challenge Nietzsche? But everyone should now become the Übermensch, their own master and the will to power. And that's when you started to see postmodernism and like everything is power-based. There is no morals and ethics anymore. It's just exploitation and power. And that's what moving away from that Christian ethic has led us to. And a lot of people seen this, Dostoevsky and Nietzsche being amongst the early ones, that then influenced other postmodernist philosophers that came later.
Hitler was a big fan of the Übermensch idea.
Sure, well, all of that, man. And that's what Jordan Peterson correlated a lot of the Nietzschean philosophy to not just the Nazism, but the Bolsheviks. Like once you don't have principles for that, then Solzhenitsyn clarified it with the line separating good and evil flows through not through economies or nations, but through every man's heart. Like it's not a rich or a poor thing. Like there's a decency thing. And if you're postmodernist and you don't have that centralizing logos, that axiom to kind of gauge morality from, then I mean, inevitably you're going to get into weird territory. That just became abundantly clear to me, and that's why I really love the William Hepburn analogy of the cut flower. Like, you know, it's when you cut a flower, say using it like the flower itself is symbolic of Western civilization, and it grew and it blossomed into this beautiful flower. But now we've plucked it from the soil that sustains it. We moved away from the Christianity that made it prosper, and it's slowly withering and dying, and it's becoming something else. It's inevitably, it's just getting worse and worse. And if we don't get it back in the soil, I really think we're fucked. Pardon the vulgarity, but I really had to put emphasis on that.
No, man. Fuck it. Hit as many F-bombs as you need, brother. We're B-52s. We're fucking Iran's nuclear.
It's the information war, right? All there.
Yeah, you know, it's and I want to go back to something you said earlier, because you were talking about how they're doing all this out in the open. And I think what's happened is with COVID, they realized that whatever cover they had before is gone. Mm-hmm. It's gone. And everything they're doing is transparent to one extent or another. We may not know it right away, but we will find out eventually. I think to be honest with you, that these elite fucking weasels have finally figured out the internet. I think they finally figured it out. Like, oh shit, there's a method of communication and people can talk about this stuff, and documents can be shared like to billions of people in the flash of the blink of an eye. Holy fuck. Right. So they're just catching up to where we've been for 20 years. Yeah. And now they're at this point where they're like, well, if we just overload them with information, if there's so much corruption, it's kind of like what happened during the Trudeau administration here in Canada. When there's so much corruption happening all the time, it's impossible to keep up with any one issue.
Mm-hmm. You're overwhelmed with it. It's demoralizing.
And I think that's what's happening to us. I think we're just being purposely overwhelmed. Like literally, man, you wake up every morning. Like for me, I go and I read the Bureau, and then I'll kind of flip through X really quickly. And to be honest, I'm spending a lot less time on X, just because I don't like what it's becoming, and I just don't want to be part of the fucking the echo chamber battle, the shouting match between cults. Mm-hmm. But I will go and check it out and see what's just to see what's happening in the world, if anything happened. And it's like every day there's 10 new fucking things, right? Like think about it like this. The current sitting president of the United States had 2 known attempts on his life while he was campaigning to become president. That feels like it happened a fucking decade ago.
Yeah.
That was like 8 months ago, man.
Yeah, a lot of people can't even remember his name. I believe it was Crooks, William Crooks.
Yeah,
I've seen it on another podcast, though. Someone said, and then it's like, whoa, buddy didn't even realize, like, wow, I really can't, I don't know that name. Every other previous assassin is known. The names are known.
Yeah, I know. I think it's William Thomas Crooks,
yeah.
Or Thomas William. I think it's William Thomas Crooks. And then the second guy is Ryan Ruth. Mm-hmm. We know nothing about either of those guys. And if you think about it, had this have been the 90s, we would still be like unpacking that.
But it would be
scenario.
It would be an establishment press doing it. You know what I mean?
Oh, of course.
Which is way different. So now it's dangerous. I have to make these things go away. Let me riff off that for a moment, because watching it all, watching Trump get elected in his second term, and then some of his posts, like, dude, I was a faithful believer. I thought, we're getting the Epstein file. We got Diddy. We're going to find out what celebrities are involved in, like, subverting people. We're going to get all of this truth. There's a commission for 9/11 truth, like where the people are taking over the institutions. And a lot of people felt like that. And then I just see him. He was leveraging it, bro. He's using the population, the populace at large, as a leverage for whatever negotiations are going on. So he's saying I'm going to release them tomorrow. Tomorrow's the day they're getting released. And clearly he's trying to influence some external conversation. Like there's a bunch of elite people that are chopping up the world right now, man. And they can't get along with each other. And we're all going to have to die and suffer for it. And that's the calamity of government, man. Like I say, in some sense, there's a lot of people that go to one extreme with this. Like we need to go back to empire, post-liberal. We need to go into this like real authority. So it's not, it's black and white. And then there's like, for me, I think of nuclear energy. I'll use this analogy just because it's so appropriate. nuclear energy is dangerous. We've had episodes like Fukushima, 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, where the fallout was devastating, and that's because it's centralized. But the benefits can still be there when you decentralize the nuclear power. You have a neighborhood reactors and a grid of reactors. It's going to mitigate the potential for major meltdown. So when you have smaller localized governments that then are in a larger network, you don't have that strong centralized force. So as much as like a 3 Mile Island or a Chernobyl can happen, so could a Maoist China or a Bolsheviks Russia or a Nazi Germany could just as easily happen, right? And the one way to mitigate that, and just logically, I think I'm on steady ground, is to just neuter the government. Big God, small government, big God, right? Like that's kind of the dichotomy that we were talking about, right? Like once you move away from that as your orienting principle and how you interpret the life, you need to go somewhere. It's just the way we're wired. And societally, we especially require structure. So the government inevitably fills the void, and we get to what Nietzsche and Dostoevsky predicted, which were some of the totalitarian regimes of the 20th century. And to my utter dismay, it seems like we're heading back in that way. There's a lot of really smart people that, like I said, their answer is more authority. They see it this as a failure of liberalism generally. So they want like there's pro-monarchy people, there's pro-empire people, post-liberal people that are thinking it's time to. And I don't think that's accurate because I really don't think liberalism had an honest go. It was being manipulated since the 60s. We all know when, 63, that was when like the deep state took over and there was no semblance of, and even before that with the Federal Reserve Act, that was the beginning of the end for the West, whatever we were. But I mean, after World War II, this order seemingly they consolidated more power. After Kennedy's assassination, they just took over, man. They influenced every subsequent administration until Reagan. And then after Reagan, I believe everyone was in the uniparty. I really believe that until Trump. And then maybe Trump is too. Or maybe he's now getting, like, who knows, man? We're trying to interpret some 5D chess. And it's
just two dipshits. Yeah,
sure,
two
right?
dipshits on the internet.
Absolutely.
Well, here's the thing. I felt like, look, they tried to kill him twice, right? They tried to kill Trump twice, and it's obvious who they are.
But they whizzed his ear. What if that was like right after that? They were like, dude, do you see? Like, we can get you. That was on purpose. We hit your ear. So, you seen how easy it was?
So here's okay. You want to talk conspiracy? So I talked about this with Payman on our live stream, and I'll talk about it here because this is my theory, and this is my wild tinfoil hat. I have no proof for any of this theory. This is what I think about when I get really fucking high.
Sure.
Okay. So you look at this kid, this Crooks kid, right? He's nobody special. He had been going to the range and doing target shooting, but nothing like, he's not like a military trained or intelligence trained guy. He's just some fucking kid who was in a BlackRock commercial who has some weird connections, right, to the FBI. And, there's that cell phone that was pinged going to and from his apartment that, was an FBI phone. So there's obviously something happening there with some shadowy figures, right? So this is my wild out there theory. I think he was enlisted to take that shot specifically because he was going to miss that shot. Mm-hmm. He's shooting from a rooftop with iron sights. That would be an easy shot for somebody who's been shooting their whole lives or spends a lot of time at the range. But he misses the shot because he's not that experienced, and he's using iron sights. He has no scope on his rifle. Not only that, but there's a lot of evidence that there's another shooter on the water tower. So just for brevity, because, we are heading down this path into pure speculation, Jason's wild, high, crazy thoughts. You have two shooters, both shots miss. I think the way they looked at it was, look, if the kid somehow manages to hit the shot, great, problem solved. But I think the idea was that he was going to miss that shot so that they could sit him down, because I think he's more valuable. He's a more valuable asset to the deep state, considering the huge populist following that he has. Mm-hmm. He's more valuable to them alive.
It would have been a martyr otherwise. It would
exactly
have been civil war right away.
Right. And then you have Ryan Ruth, who has some very interesting
Ukraine ties,
connections to Ukraine, interesting connections to NGOs and other groups, right? And now I think, why is this fucking guy sitting in the bush with a rifle? Is it possible that he's just crazy? Yes, it's entirely possible that it's crazy, or that he's crazy. But if you want to get fucking really out there with the theories, the first shot was intended to tell Trump, hey, you need to work with us or we're going to blow your fucking brains out, and we can do it anytime. And then the second, attempt was them saying, look, we have access to a lot of crazy fucking people. We will make this happen.
reiterating
Take us very
your point.
seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's my wild, crazy out there theory.
Dude,
it
that's
isn't
logically sound. It's conjecture, right? Look, we can't be afraid to speculate when we know our opponent is lying to us. And this is the bubble a lot of us live in. Well, what's your evidence? Because I wrote like an assessment on the Canadian Uniparty. How I see it, man. I kind of said it before the election, and I think he can't be proven, right? There's never any tangible evidence. We still can't prove Boris Johnson was part of a uniparty in the UK, but he was, and we all fucking know he was. I mean, just the way that went down, I'm sorry. But I wrote my assessment, and the major thing I get is like, where's your evidence? It's like, well, these people are very cautious to not have evidence. And I did clearly qualify this as conjecture. But I mean, there's a preponderance of circumstantial evidence. And we can't be afraid to speculate because there's no other choice. It's so convoluted. You have to utilize conjecture. And like I say, I just qualify it as such and I let it rip. I think your theory's sound. I think there's definitely likely some of that to it, right? And these are the kind of negotiations that are going on. And then Trump gets in and now he's saying, well, now I'm gonna use this. But like, look at like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel. I got a good sense for people, I think, and I know people. I don't have faith in individuals. I know we're very flawed and people can sway, but like, what the fuck is really going on, man? What are they showing these guys? These guys that are super pro-populist, we're going to get the Epstein files, this and that, then to have them wired, like that press conference they did where their both eyes are open. They're like, yeah, no, like he killed himself. He definitely killed himself. It's fucking weird as hell, man. Like, what do they just, once they get in power, it's like, here it is. Here's the lizard people. You know what I mean? It's fucking locked down. You know, like you just push the narrative, man. Enjoy your life. Like it's not what you think it is. It brings me back to Plato's cave, the allegory. Like we're all like chained into a fence and we don't see reality. We just see the cast of shadows on the wall. And then one of us gets out and he comes back and he's trying to tell us, like, I'm not going to get into the allegory, but that's what I'm starting to think. When I'm really stoned and my mind's going off, I'm thinking like, man, what are these people finding out when they get in there? When they actually get to the height of power, do they get an explanation? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy because something is clearly influencing everyone and we're not getting any of the story.
Well, I think, look, have you seen that meme? Probably my favorite meme of all time. And listeners, I'm sorry, I know I've talked about this a few times, but there's a meme of Kash Patel because he always has his eyes wide open, right? And it says, the face you make when you tell everyone Epstein killed himself so you don't kill yourself.
Yeah.
But I honestly think that that's what it is. I think that you get into those positions and they pull you aside and say, listen,
this is how it really works.
This is how it really works. And you are not too big for us to manage. You are not too big for us to handle. And there are stuff that we're going to let you go after. We're going to let you go after China. We're going to let you go after fentanyl, right? That's real police work that we need done in this country. However, Epstein is off limits. Mm-hmm. And they don't give any other explanations. And I think, look, if you really look into, and again, this isn't conspiracy theory stuff, tinfoil hat is off. If you really read into the Epstein stuff, like what they found, his connections, who he was very obviously a Mossad agent.
I went down
CIA
the Whitney
operative.
Web. I went on a Whitney Web binge. I never read the books, but I know what you.
Yeah, he's very obviously Israeli intelligence. And as I talked to Nick Bryant last year, and he's like the expert on this, and he said he believes that Epstein was Israeli intelligence, but he said that the CIA would never let Israeli intelligence operate in the United States without their involvement. So it is very likely that he's a dual agent he was a dual agent both for the CIA and the Mossad, and that he was doing some very, very, I mean, look, you want to talk top of the mountain of depravity, that he was right at the peak of that mountain.
It's the honeypots, right? Like
baby killers are maybe a step above him,
sure.
right?
Yep.
But I think that's what happens is you get in there and somebody from some place, from some agency you've never heard of, pays you a visit and sits you down and says, look, I know you've seen some of these files, and there's stuff that you haven't seen yet, and we're just telling you now to drop this one. Just leave it. And I really think that's what it is, because look, everybody knows Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Like even people who aren't politically involved in any way, shape, or form.
I don't even think he's dead, man.
Really?
I don't have the faith. Like, I'm not going to the flat earth, but once your core premises are locked, you know what I mean? It's like, does China even exist? I never seen it. I'm joking, obviously, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, it's where does it end? And it's seemingly endless. What I find fascinating about these honeypot operations, the way they control the elites, it's by their own sins. You know what I mean? Look, dude, if I would never, and I don't know what it's like to be some depraved billionaire that's already explored every fantasy he's ever had. But I mean, I you just wouldn't do that under any circumstances. So it's like the people that are compromising themselves are doing it on their own volition in some very tangible regard. And that's what's kind of terrifying about it when you get back into like a religious purview. Like, there's like, for me, dude, like I really do believe in good and evil. I believe in them as tangible, visceral concepts that I think the only way we can experience them on this plane of existence is through other people. I don't, you know what I mean? But I think these other people are influenced by the essence of good and evil. And it's phenomenal to see the stranglehold that this post-World War II order has had over the West. Like, here we are, we thought, through our era of prosperity, like let's go back to the 60s and up to the 90s, like we're the free world, like this is awesome. Little did we know the entire time we were being ideologically subverted. And like it was just keeping the whole system going. Like, I don't know, man. It doesn't just seem like we're at a transitional stage for like the economy or some kind of political transition. It seems like there's a paradigm shift coming in the way we understand reality. And starting to come back to like, look, we do need some ethical basis in religion, and it has to be metaphysical in origin, like in order for it to speak to us on that deep level, because it can't be removable. You can't remove that centralized ethic, that God. You can't remove the logos. When you remove the logos, we go back to postmodernism. I think ancient cultures were more aware of this. So even if you look at them as primitive and like technologically, I think philosophically they were far more advanced than us, and they understood the practical implications of monotheism, having that one God. And I mean, like I said, like what the fuck do I know ultimately? But we're watching something just come entirely undone. And no one knows what it is. Everyone's speculating. What I don't like is certitude. Like when we're in these very hypothetical, very broad conversations where we're trying to say like, what the fuck is going on? Like if you have certitude, then you're not paying attention, because how could you have certitude? There is no stable ground to stand on and say, this is definitely how it is. So it's kind of like, what are we doing? Should we even be discussing it? Is it doing anyone a service? I honestly don't know what else to do at this point. I started speaking about these topics because I was at my end with it. There's not a lot of people I know in my regular life that like to talk about this stuff. And it was just, I was at a loss, man. I started ranting into social media and I started feeding these algorithms and I started to become popular. I made a post today and it's very true, man. One of the important things when you start to put yourself out there is don't let the naysayers define you. Don't give them that gravity over yourself. Yeah. But on the flip side of that, don't let the praise get to you neither. Because it's far more dangerous, man. You start believing you're something special, the fucking ego takes over, and then you're one of these assholes on there that are just shilling for a cause, trying to monetize and just shilling. It's just steady.
Yeah, I would say like the cause is not even, I mean, the cause is basic. It's their bank account. Like that's the part that's really like
obvious now too, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean that's the part that's kind of like made me sick with the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I started Brave New Normal from a very real place. I came back to writing essays in 2020 during COVID, because I took a long break from writing. I went into screenwriting for a really long time. I wrote a bunch of series and features, some of which have been made. Other scripts are just sitting there forever, languishing, collecting dust. But point is, I came back because I saw what was happening, and I realized immediately, not only had I predicted in my previous columns in the decade prior that what exactly was coming. Like I knew what was on the way. Fucking trucks, sorry everybody. But I came back to writing because I spotted what was happening. I knew what was happening. I knew where this was leading us to. And I thought, fuck it, I got to sit down and I got to write. And then returning to writing brought me to the Brave New Normal podcast. I got really, really lucky very early that, all of the big names I reached out to said yes to me and gave me a good foundation to build on. Right. But, now that I'm here, like, especially having the experiences of dealing with people inside of this space, what I've realized is like a lot of them are bullshit.
It's egos and assholes, man. That's the majority.
But it's worse than that. It's mass mind manipulation. The model that they're working on is the same model that the legacy media worked on for decades, right? And that's kind of where I've come to this like period of like existential crisis, because I'm like, am I contributing to this? Am I another one of these fucking floating heads online who's just, screaming fire in a crowded theater all the fucking time just to grab enough attention to accumulate ad dollars, and then we start the cycle over again? Am I in the echo chamber? Am I throwing boomerangs? Like, what am I doing here? And that's really where I've been with all this lately. Like I'm reformatting Brave New Normal in a lot of ways, not reformatting, but restructuring in a sense of the people that I'm going to be talking to.
Let me jump in here, Jason, because I think you're one of the more valuable voices, and I think you're one of the more valuable voices right now because of that. You realize your own proclivity for that. And it's like, that's the people that need to be talking, the people that realize every day, like, okay, I'm just a regular guy trying to interpret this. Don't let your ego take over. Be honest. Like, being honest with yourself is one of the most crucial aspects if you're going to get into like informing the population. The fourth estate, whatever the media was totally taken over, and they've abdicated all responsibility. So it fell on citizen journalists. It fell on just people that are trying to interpret it, and more independent voices. But there's a lot of people that don't have the proclivity that you're very much showing. Like, I don't know, man. I'm like, you have morals, you have principles, and you have integrity. Yeah. What you're saying is indicative of that precisely. So I would very much try to convince you not to, because someone's going to do it. This is where we're at, right? Someone's going to do this. So if the honest people don't try to get a foot in the door in this market that's assembling, then the people have no hope. Like I mentioned to Payman yesterday, man, what I find demoralizing is people are finally becoming demystified with the corporate press model. A lot of older people, too. A lot of my followers are older people. They're in their 60s. They're boomers. And they finally left the corporate press because they know it's bullshit. It took a long time, but good for them. They finally got there. And then they get on to X. And who do they find? They find the fucking pleb. You know what I mean? Or like one of these. He's the only one I'll call out by name because I had a big fallout with him. And it's just like, dude, it's like you said, it's the same model. The way they own the corporate press, they're amplifying these disingenuous actors that present as independent voices to capture the electorate, man. And it's we need to get in here and have a genuine, like, look, I don't claim to be an expert. I'm not the expert of all things requiring expertise, and I have not been everywhere. So, I mean, my opinion is as good as it is, right? I let my, like, once we get into credentialism, I'm bored, because that's just like you get into credentialism when you don't have a response or refutation for my assertion. That's the only time that occurs to me, and it's just like right away you lost me. Like, I know your tactics, man. I'm not going to get into that, but that's the sentiment we're hearing, and that terrifies me. People are saying, hey, you can't weigh in on the Iran and Israel conflict because you're not an expert. Where did you go to school, bro? Have you been there? You know, it's like, well, no, and it's not fair. And that's a dangerous sentiment, because at the root of that sentiment is that we all just let it go to the experts. Hey, what do I know? It's robbing yourself of your own autonomy and agency. as an interpretive being that actually is participating. It's like I've been saying about Canada. I feel like the majority of our politics, no, fuck that. I feel like all of our politics is an elaborate performative charade. And the premise of this charade is to provide the peasants, us, with the illusion of participatory governance. We're watching a fucking WWE. The matches are predetermined, and then we're providing commentary on it, like blowing smoke up everyone's ass. Like, I don't know, man. I don't have the faith that I used to have in a lot of things to say things with certitude. So, kind of from that position of necessity, I still have to question it, or I will personally go mad. And like I say, if it's not me, I know I try my best to have principles. I try my best. Like when me and you first started communicating, I remember saying to you, like, yeah, dude, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just really trying to be as honest as I can. I don't want to get into my own fucking ego or get audience captured and start pushing narratives. I want to be the regular guy I was when I started. So I'm determined to do that. And I think more people should do that. And that's a hedge against these disingenuous actors that are convoluting our national discourse. And that's what they're doing.
Well, that's where the integrity comes from, right? Like for me, I don't know. I've been writing for long enough. You know, I got my first gig as a columnist when I was 22 years old, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what the fuck a 22-year-old has to say about the world that has any value to anyone, I don't know. But I've been communicating and expressing my ideas for a long time. And look, people watching this, you can obviously tell I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I was given a gift to sit down and kind of weave my ideas together in a way that I think is, you know, creative. But you know, the thing is it's in saying that, like, you know, the quest to maintain integrity is a difficult one. It's a very long fucking road.
It's perpetual. It's never ending.
Yeah. And so like where I am right now, like we were talking before we started recording, like where I am right now, I'm at this kind of like weird crossroads where I appreciate your words, brother. And they do mean a lot to me because you're one of see, like what I did when I decided to shift my focus onto Canada, I started paying attention to everyone. And then what I did was I grabbed the commentators that I thought were real and valuable and had something real to say and were coming from a good place, even if I disagreed with them. Right. And so, you know, yourself, Carla Joy Treadway, Elliot Daigneault, Payman Ascari, like these are my Avengers. Yeah, I refer to you guys as my Avengers. You guys are my Iron Man and Spider-Man and these fucking heroes that, like, dude, I love the fact that you started a podcast and I listened to the first episode of Payman. I love both you guys so fucking much. And I'm so glad that I was introduced to you through Payman. And so like, I look at this and I think that there is this like core group of individuals who are really coming from the right place that are emerging. But the hard thing for me is like, look, I've had the opportunity to have a lot of these fucking nincompoops on my podcast, right? Both Canadian and American, these alarmists, these people who have built a career out of sensationalizing trivial issues on the internet, right? And I've turned them all down, every single one of them, right? And although it probably would have been good for views on a few of them, I'm not doing that. I'm not here for that. But see, this is the thing, is like the place where I am now is like, I hope people don't see me that way. I hope people see me as being something different. They see John Paul Berg as being something different, and Payman and Ascari and Carla Joy Treadway and Elliot Daigneault and all the good people who are doing this. Because what's scary to me is like, you know, like I refer to them as the floating heads, you know, like the TikTok videos where they're, you know, and I don't want to be confused for being one of them, even though I'm no smarter or no better. I'm being completely genuine and honest at all times. And I'm honest about what I do know and what I don't know. And the thing that bothers me is like a lot of these people present themselves as being quasi experts on issues where I watch their video and just me from my average intelligence, well-read brain can tell you they're fucking lying. Right. And that what they're doing is they're trying to reinforce narratives spun up from the inner workings of whatever cult they belong to. But the other scary thing too is I don't even know if they know they're lying. I don't know if they know they're being dishonest.
That's what I was thinking as you were saying it.
The information stream is so polluted that they're receiving third, fourth, you know, fifth-rate information.
You touched on this in your article. You're saying we're all just subject to algorithms. I can't remember how you wrote it, and it's very true. And we're all trying to interpret this. And is the act of our interpretation not just being weaponized against us? Is it having a positive or a detrimental effect? And the way I kind of rationalize it from my continuation, because our first conversation I mentioned, like, I'm wondering if I should even keep doing this. Because here I was advocating for Pierre, and then I just got demoralized before the election, like 3 or 4 months before the election. I was like, nah, fuck this guy. Like, whatever it was, I was in denial for so long. With all the shilling for the various immigrant communities and then the Christine Anderson thing and the shilling for the war in Ukraine. And then when Trump got on the scene, it was just, for me, Pierre's hand was visible and I could see that it was all jokers. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I try not to, I'm not here to be right. I'm here to be honest and I'm here to be sincere. And I'm a discerning individual. And I'm not afraid to speculate, but I mean, I do my vigilance to ensure that I'm on some stable ground, not just, with reality, but like with my own morals too, right? Because like there's so many holes right now, and it's like you could just, unbeknownst to you, you could become an advocate for something bad, or your genuine sentiment can then be weaponized to fuel something. Think of war propaganda, for instance. If someone shows you an atrocity from war, like a picture of that, like, forget about how obviously it's an atrocity and we're all empathetic humans and it's like, that's so sad. But what they want to do is to evoke elicit a reaction from you. So the whole premise of it, it's like your reaction is their action. They're not showing you this so you could feel bad for these people. They're showing you this so you can create more of it against the other end of that. And like, if we can't get past this propensity as human beings, like this tribalism that happens, like, we're fucked. Because now we do have the technology to just wipe us right back. And when you look into like younger Dryas impact theory, I don't know if you're familiar with any of that shit.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
How many fucking times have we done this? Have we built civilization to a point and just destroyed ourselves a million times? Like, it's like a bad episode of The Outer Limits or something. But I mean, these are the kind of like philosophical quandaries you're speculating on. And I think it's relative to no one being able to find stable ground. Even the most intelligent, discerning individuals right now, especially from Canada, we have a hard time getting a feel for everything, man. And there's so many disingenuous players that are convoluting the national and the international discourse that none of us know what the fuck is going on. And then I look into what I've read about mass formation. One of the main principles that have to be very prevalent before these mass formations occur within a populace is uncertainty. We're not good with uncertainty, man. We derive a lot of our perception of security from thinking we know what the fuck's going on. But I mean, ultimately, when that's rocked, that's when you get into the cognitive dissonance. Like, fuck, maybe I don't know what's going on, but I can't even think about that. I'm not going to look at that. Like I mentioned to Payman yesterday, my wife has a friend, and I'm just using this as an analogy, and she knows that I speak to these issues online. And most people probably think I'm out of my fucking mind, and they're probably half right. But I mean, she says earnestly, she says, I know there's something seriously going on. Like, I can sense it, but I'm just afraid to look at it. They feel not just ineffectual. That's beyond apathy. That's willful blindness. And that's dangerous, man, because that's the same shit. There was people like that when the Bolsheviks happened. There's people like that during the Cultural Revolution. Like, you got to look at this. The monsters under the bed, you're better off looking at them and dealing with them. Don't go to sleep. Then you're definitely fucked, right? Like,
Well, what's funny is I was talking to my brother about this. I think the big contributing factor to the chaos that we're all experiencing right now is us having the instinctual sense that there is something deeper, metaphysical, spiritual happening. And most of us, because we have lost our connection to God, can't put a finger on it or understand what it is. And I think that's what's creating a lot of the uncertainty. It's not necessarily like economic and government, although those are contributing factors. It's bigger. It's deeper. There's a disruption in the signal that we can all feel, and we don't know what it is. And I think that there's something we're going to find out. Obviously, we're going to find out. I think this thing has a crescendo, but how that happens, I don't know.
Yeah,
But I think we're all picking up something, with our transistors,
100%, man. Like,
a disruption. Yeah.
we like to think we have this modern bias, and I think it's relative to some of our technological comforts that we know all there is to know. We don't know what the fuck consciousness is. Consciousness couldn't have evolved. And when you get into like evolutionary biology presently, like there's a lot of big questions that are being asked. I started reading I believe it was the God hypothesis. I can't remember the individual's name. The book is far beyond me, and I read a lot of like out there literature. Like I'm no slouch when it comes to that for a working class guy. But this was like at my limit, and he was using very specific terminology. But there's a lot of real problems with some of our perceptions of things, and we need new stories. And stories are how Jordan Peterson was the biggest one to point this out. Like we might see ourselves as this little cosmic accident. There was a big bang. And those secular atheists that interpret, or they're called like mechanistic materialists, they view themselves as a machine. So like you can have a chemical imbalance. If you're having anxiety and depression, it's not the world that's wrong, it's you. And you could augment that by taking this pill, and that's going to make you better. But I don't think there's a mental health crisis. I don't think we're entirely physical beings. I think there's a spiritual crisis. And I really think if you get in touch with that aspect of it, when you return to our narratives, and our narratives are Christianity, and that's just a secular purview. Like I believe it's the truth. I sincerely do. It took me a long time to get there as someone who was a lapsed Catholic. I was raised Catholic when I was a kid, and then I kind of came back. But like, there's good secular reasoning for having religion. It's like Dennis Prager would say. I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but this was just brilliant. He said, I would never enter an argument or a debate to try to prove the existence of God. But what I would do is try to enter a debate to prove the necessity for God.
Ooh,
and that's
beautiful.
Dude, that's where we're at right now. It's just, and it's becoming abundantly clear to like everyone's coming back to religion, and not this new age spirituality, Christianity in some form. Like that's where the truth is. That is the truth. And for me to say this right now, if me 3 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you that I would be saying this right now. And so people that were kind of cynical and secular most of their lives are realizing, okay, we were fucking lied to. Forget about climate change or Marxism. The biggest lie our generation was fed was not just that there is no God. Nobody knows. That's one of the biggest questions of existence. But what we were presented with is that even if you consider that as an option, you're primitive. Only fools consider God or theism. That's some kind of archaic primitives, and that was the biggest lie we could have ever been told, and the most detrimental.
Yes. And oh man, dude, my brother, I was talking to my younger brother the other day, and my brother he's kind of going through the same transition that you and I went through. And if you had told me 4 years ago that I would be, referring to myself as a Christian and Jesus Christ is my guide through life, I would have told you are fucking insane, right? But look, people watching this, Brave New Normal only exists because God called me to it. Brave New Normal only still exists because God wants me here. And I know that because I communicate with God, with my creator, with the spirit frequently, all the time. And the spirit is keeping me here doing this for now, right? And that's, for me, that's proof that God exists, because trust me when I tell you this, I am not the guy who's, got his head in the clouds believing in fairy dust. But what I said to my brother was, open up the New Testament, actually read about Jesus Christ, read his words, but also read read about his acts and the things that he does, because Jesus is the most misinterpreted figure in the history of humanity, at least as far as I know.
The ultimate rebel, and it's the ultimate injustice to happen to a divine, perfect being. Like, you know what I mean? It's the story.
What I was going to say. What I was going to say is even more ironic is how the guy who basically set out on a mission to restructure, reform the way the world views its connection to God, and in the process dismantle the establishment, which included the religious establishment, was later turned into the figurehead for religion.
This is where I find hope, man. This is where I find hope. Me and Payman breached on this yesterday a little bit. Yeah. And it's like, to be a rebel, like in our day, you're 40, 42, I'm 41,
42,
Payman's right around
yeah.
that age too. Like when we were kids, to rebel was like, against the system. It was like counterculture still, right? But now it's like we've gone so far that if you want to rebel now, don't get some tattoos and a mohawk or shave your head. Put a suit on and go to church. Be good in your community. Adopt.
Right? I know. Be respectful and honorable.
It's funny because we're 40 and it's funny to us, but the kids in their 20s are all like this. They're fucking hungry for that, man. They haven't had that in so long, and it needs to be presented to them by genuine people, not like look, this Andrew Tate character. Just thinking about him, he was featured in Canadian media today. I have no problems with this guy's doing his thing. He's very successful at it. Look, I'm not here to shit on anyone, but like when masculinity in and of itself is repressed, and it very much is for young people right now. We're not even allowed to like have rough play in school anymore. Like when that's repressed, extreme examples are going to come out and emerge. And they're going to be negative influences on people. Like that's not what masculinity is. That's what being a teenager is. That's like the adolescent, the rebellious adolescent that can't settle down. He hasn't entirely, you know what I mean? And that's what he's portraying, this hedonistic nihilism. And it's just like that's a natural reflexive response to that. We have to let like that masculine, that wisdom, that order come back and permeate our society. It went too much to the feminine, to the chaos with the reflexive empathy, and it's been a detrimental effect. We have to bring it back to the masculine, to the order.
Well, yeah. And it goes back to, earlier in our conversation, right, where you're talking about TV dads in the 60s and the 70s, these fucking emasculated doofus dipshits who, are bumbling fucking idiots and fuck everything up. Well, that was done as a response to feminism, right? Yes. It was let's strip out the masculine parts and now look at where we are, dude. Right. Like look around society, just go for a fucking walk.
It's representative.
And you're just, you're seeing these spineless jellyfish emasculated fuckwits.
That's the term. Right? It was representative of the emasculation of society more broadly. And feminism by its very nature, like that's a whole different discussion. We'll save that. But like that's just like teaching young women everything. Like that's the biggest lie that was ever perpetrated on young women, was that feminism and they should strive to be males. And I'm not like going back to like trying to repress women or anything, but that's just from their practical purview. That's not for their best interest. I know of a study. It's very vague, so I shouldn't really reference it, but I will because I don't give a fuck. They did a study amongst very professional women who excelled to the heights. They were able to compete with men and excel to the heights of industry. And they did this with childless women. And they asked them, and it wasn't like 99%. It was every single one of them said that they wish, some of them said they would trade it all and go back and be a mother. And that would have been important to them. And that'll always be a regret. Other ones say they wish they had tried to integrate it in, make the sacrifice in their professional life to have a personal life. But I mean, that's even relevant to men. Like we got to get back to our traditional values because that was the soil that sustains us.
Yes. So me and my wife, we are a traditional family, right? Like, I do the man shit. She does the woman shit. We are, like you go back to like, it's funny because I was just thinking when we were talking about it, like, you go back to like Brady Bunch, right? Mm-hmm. Like Mike Brady and Carol Brady. Right. And that was such a good example of the way the male female dynamic works because like, he brings home the bacon, she cooks it in a pan. Mm-hmm. Right. But there were always these like little like subliminal jokes where, Mike Brady would be like taking charge with the family and then Carol would make like a face at the camera because that Carol, that's the way the male female dynamic works, is that like, although he's the authority figure in the house, she tends to be the authority figure in the relationship.
And she's number two, man. And that's a crucial role. Like that's,
but that's what I'm saying, right? Is it's like they downplayed that. Yes. Like they muddied that water. They fucked up that frequency. And so like in my house, me and my wife very much have that same relationship, right? Where I'm the authority figure in the house. I make all the big decisions. I'm the one who spends the big money when we got to spend the big money, right? But in the background, she is the one who is the authority figure in our relationship. Mm-hmm. And that's the way the male-female relationship tends to work. And that's why me and my wife have been together for 11 years. Now, here's the crazy part. in every single scenario within my friend group and extended group where those roles were fucked with, that frequency was meddled with, all of those marriages are falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's something about us as human beings, as men and women. There's something about that dynamic in our relationship that you can't interfere with.
Here's what it is, bro. Like, women won't respect you if you let her make you into a submissive man. Like, dude, that might work for 10 years, but like, and I'm being so like, I'm hesitant to say this because it's something I haven't really entirely thought about, but my instincts tell me it's just, I don't know, ladies, we'll put it to you. If there's any women that watch, you know, like, would you be attracted by having a man that was just at your beck and call? Or would you be more attracted to an assertive man that was going to tell you the way he wants it to be? Not an unfair man, not a misogynistic man, but like, you know, I think they're wired to be attracted to that as much as we're wired to be attracted to a feminine. Yeah.
They're wired to look for a provider and a protector, right? And some guy who's just going to fucking, you know, fold in half every time somebody yells at him is not somebody that they can have confidence in as a protector. Sure. So like, that's the thing is like, you know, like with, I can use my relationship as an example. Whenever we're out or when, you know, at night in the home, nobody is comfortable completely unless I'm home, because they know that as long as I'm here, everybody's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. No matter what comes through that door, I'm throwing myself at it before to get it taken care of.
And that's the most natural, simplistic way it resonates with families, right? And it's exactly when dad's home, right? You remember exactly. You were a kid and you had a dad, right?
That's right. Nobody's comfortable going to sleep until I'm home. But, you know, in me and my wife's relationship, when we have an argument, even if I know she's wrong, I Jedi mind trick her and say, yes, you're right. I fucked up. I'm sorry. That's my Jedi mind trick with her. But the reason why, like, I think women need to win those arguments, and now we're getting into a whole other discussion. And ladies, I'm sorry, but the reason why women need to win those arguments at a genetic level, like what's imprinted in them, is they need to have some sort of control over the dominant male, right? So if you're a dominant man, you know, an alpha for lack of a better word, if you're a man who's dominant in life, then what your wife or the woman who is in a relationship with you needs to know is that you are capable of being subdued. However, you are not submissive.
It's the female fantasy, bro. It's Beauty and the Beast. That's what it is, right? It's a deep archetype that women are attracted to, and it's profound and it's very real. And what we've forgotten with this postmodernist feminist version of life right now is we forgot that a lot of these things they're not bugs, they're features. So like, let's just look at this, like, man versus women is fucking stupid. We are one, like we come together as one and we procreate.
We create life.
Here, I'll leave with a sentiment I heard someone say. Now it's unfortunate, I can't remember who said this, but it's the sentiment that's important. And it was a Catholic individual, and he was talking about the collaboration with God. When a married man and a married woman have relations and actually have a baby, when we procreate, that's a collaboration between man and God. And what did we do in modernity? We cheapened it. We turned it into fun time. And I think a lot of our problems can come from this. Like, there is sanctity and there is a lot of truth in our traditions, and we need to come back there. I'll go back to the theme, man. The soil that sustained the West, we need to get that flower back in it, man, because we're withering and dying.
Perfect way to end this. John Paul Berg, man, you know something, man? I came into this conversation hot today. I've been dealing with my own crisis as a commentator, analyst, writer, whatever the fuck you want to call me, whatever this is. And, dude, this conversation helped clarify a lot of things for me, man. I'm really glad we got to sit down and talk.
Me too.
Dude, I listened to your first episode with Payman. Of course, you two are... Fuck, man. I'm like, I listen to guys like you guys and I'm like, why am I such a fucking idiot? Why am I so stupid? Like, I really need to step my game up here.
It's decency, though. This is like, you mentioned this yesterday and I wanted to get in and then I forgot. Like, it's not, am I smart enough? And this is why the credentialism is bullshit and it is a logical fallacy, because it's about how good you are, man. It's, are you
Yeah.
decent? Do you have integrity? These are the things for leaders or commentators. These are the qualities you want. You don't want smart guys are smart enough to lie to themselves. The smart guys are smart enough to come up with these like elaborate conceptual gymnastics in order to justify and rationalize atrocities. Look at it this way, dude. There's not a tyrant out there that doesn't think he's doing it for your own good. That's the sickness of tyranny, right? It's the embodiment of evil. But as you said, Jason, dude, I really believe that things happen for a reason. 100%. We were supposed to talk today, as we were supposed to meet there a few months ago, right?
Yeah, no, so totally.
My advice is just keep soldiering forward, because if you leave this space, there's going to be some dickhead, one of those floating heads that are all like, just go vote for Pierre, you know what I mean? Or whatever it is. Like, these are the people that are going to fill the void. It's like evil pride.
Here's a headline I found online. Right. Now I am going to extrapolate only what supports whatever narrative I am trying to weave. Now pay attention to this part. Yeah, I know.
The overlay, it's just like, it's...
And I'm not shitting on everybody who does that, because there are lots of people who actually do that are conveying valuable information. It's just a lot of fucking garbage, and it's driving me crazy.
Yeah, 100%.
And I don't know if this is garbage. I don't know. I don't fucking know. But you know what? I know what you had to say today wasn't garbage. And brother, I am so glad that you are here doing your thing. You are one of those guys, man. Like I said, you're one of my Avengers. People that I look to, that I can fucking trust. And, you know, like Payman, Carla, Elliot, you, Sam Cooper, you know, you guys are fucking doing it, man. And I'm just happy that I fit into the picture somehow.
It means a lot, man. And like I said earlier, like, I try not to let the praise get to me, because like I know that that's as dangerous as like I said.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when you Hollywood me, when you fucking duck me next time I ask you to be on the show, I'll know you've made it.
Never happen, man. And that's why I think I'm being deboosted. I don't think guys like you and I get anywhere by design, because we're too honest.
No,
you can't own an honest man. You just can't.
That's true.
And that's a good theme to end it on.
Yeah, let's do it there. All right, John, tell everybody where they can find you, brother.
Yeah, man, I'm still exclusively on X. It's Semper Veritas X. I intend to diversify my social media presence as soon as possible. Well, I'm posting all the time, and now I'm doing these podcasts, and I'm working full time. I'm a full time working class dude, so I'm a laborer. So it's like, it's hard, man, but I'm trying to pump this out as much as I can, and I intend to diversify my presence. So just look for the podcast name, Dumb the Wiser. And that fits into the themes, right? It's not about being intelligent. It's about being decent, you know, and there's wisdom there. I mean, intelligence is aptitude and wisdom is experience. So you could find me on X presently, and just keep watching, man, because I'm going to do some stuff here.
All right. Well, listen, everybody watching, the link is directly below this video, or if you're on an audio streamer, it's in the episode description. Listen to the first episode with John Paul Berg and Payman Asghari. It is fucking amazing. As always, you guys are like the dynamic duo, man. You're both Batman.
Each other.
You're both Batman.
I enjoy talking to Payman.
Don't tell Payman I said this, but he'd probably be laughing. But
dude, I'm keeping that one.
But listen, everybody, go in and check out John Paul Berg. There is a rising tide of people with integrity who are far smarter than I, and I just beg you all to pay attention to them, because we gotta find some sanity amongst all this chaos. John Paul Berg, my brother, thank you once again for talking to me today, and we're gonna do this again real soon.
Absolutely.
We'll plug back in.
I'm holding you to it, man. I'm not letting you stop this, bro. We need you.
Well, thanks, brother. We'll go into our views on feminism.
Let's do that. Yeah,
family television.
We'll really get in trouble with our wives too. Fuck it, eh?
All right, let's get out of here. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Take care, bro.